Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Theresa did ask me before what happens if people get mean. I said we never get mean at forum. This is not a city council meeting. So anyway, no gavel. No gavel. We'll just turn the mic off. That wasn't a pun, by the way. Okay, well, we'll let them introduce themselves, and then they can give their information and ask for some questions.
I'll go first. Sure. Ladies first.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to come in and visit with you. It's been a year and a half since we were here as candidates back in April of 2016. So Councilor Starr and I are just finishing over a year and a half of service. It has been quite a journey, I will say. Life-changing for me. I wanted to point out, first of all, a few things I brought with. If you're interested, on the table back there, there's some handouts. And first of all, when I ran for city council, I had some things on my platform. One of them was to have open and transparency. Openness, transparency. I've been working on that. I'm writing letters to the editor. I'm sending out mailings, all at my own cost, by the way. I'm trying to connect to you. I've been encouraging people to come to public input. I want to protect that venue for you to come and speak to your council. There is movement afoot, I will tell you, to annihilate that. They don't want to hear from people. And if you don't have the right message, they don't want to hear from you especially. So I'm about hearing from our whole community. We have to have a respectful dialogue so we can be a responsive place for everyone. So I've been giving a lot of these out. There's some on the back table. This, first of all, is the contact information for the council. Email us, call us. We're here for you. We're hired by you to do your business. Also, I have a little brochure. I know some of you are gardeners. I love to garden. Unfortunately, because of I'm working 13-hour days these days. I teach piano in addition to city council. I don't have a lot of time to get to my yard, but I love it. And we passed a new ordinance. Councilor Greg Jameson kind of initiated this, and I helped to get citizens involved. But there's some brochures there. You can now plant flowers on the boulevard. Some of us were doing it anyway for years. McKinnon Park has a beautiful boulevard. There's a few restrictions. Rocks are kind of a big no-no. You can only have 25% in rocks. I think we're going to have to readdress that. But next year they're going to start enforcing this, and 3 feet is the maximum height. But anyway, it has a little information. That's back there. Also, I'm a big advocate of Neighborhood Watch. Now more than ever, we need to be caring for each other. We may not agree politically. I don't care. You're a human being. You're my neighbor. Let's reach out and take care of each other. Neighborhood Watch is one way we can do that. It doesn't cost anything. I started my Neighborhood Watch about 17 years ago in the Bel Air district, and it has paid off in huge dividends because I know who's supposed to be in my area. We care for each other. So this is a program you may want to start. The city supports it. I've got some contact information for that back there as well. And then lastly, I did send out a little postcard in the mail, and I think we're going to get to this, but we're talking about the ramp that is being proposed. And I will say that 8 months ago when this emerged, I had great concerns with it. I had concerns about transparency, who we're doing business with. I had concerns about the collateral of using the second penny. That second penny is a precious asset that we have. It's already been pledged for debt. It was initially passed for roads, for street maintenance, and this project has the second penny as the backup in case the user fees that we get from all the ramps downtown don't cover this. So we're building this ramp. I put this out. I've got great concerns about it. It's probably going to pass, but at least I'm trying to let the citizens know what's going on. So anyway, that just gives you a little history. I want you to know that I'm still committed to affordable living. I want to keep our city safe. I want to keep you connected. I do want to move forward. I want there to be development, but I think we need to use common sense moving forward within our community. So that's a little bit about me. Councilor Starr?
I'm glad there's one microphone, then we can't talk over each other sometimes by the time we're done, so we both get a chance to do that. My name is Pat Starr. I represent the northeast part of Sioux Falls. Minnesota Avenue to 26th Street is kind of the quickest way. It's actually 18th to Bonson, and then it drops to 26th. We've done some moving around in the last year. We've aligned the districts a little bit. We had a redistricting commission that had a chance to do that. So I too like to do a lot of questions because it's really more important about what you guys want to talk about rather than what necessarily we want to talk about. But I do want to get a couple things in before we start and maybe start the discussion. First of all, it's so important to be involved in government. In this room, we understand that. You have all been campaign volunteers. You've all worked on different campaigns. You've known different candidates. You've been candidates, and you have been elected officials as well, and know the sacrifice and the time that it takes, but also how important it is. One of the things we did during the budget hearings this year is we spent, there were some pretty major cuts, not dollar-wise as much as it was the significance that were cut. With a $450 million budget, we thought that it was prudent to cut $60,000 out of the budget for the Bishop Dudley House. We, with the help of Councilor Stehly and the rest of the council from the administration, felt that it was important to put that money back. It was, yes, go ahead, Jim. Oh, yes, we'll get it in the right place, sorry. We felt that it was so important to fund what goes on at the Bishop Dudley House. I had two probably priorities. The importance of taking care of people and our neighbors that don't have a warm place or a cool place during the summer. There's times in July and August and even into September that it is very difficult to be homeless and to get the help that people need. But it's also important to the people who live in that neighborhood. I've heard from many residents that live in the Whittier neighborhood that had a chance to, they don't find people in their garage or in the back seat of their car, or that where they're trying to find either a warm place or a cool place to get out of the sun. And to have as large a budget as we do as a city, and to try to balance our budget to say that things are bad, that we can't take care of the least among us. But at the same time, the things that we put back, I mean, it was $250,000 that we restored in cuts to nonprofits and what the role of our city government is. We gave more money back to the USD Discovery District. It's in an early process of where we're at with medical research in Sioux Falls. But to be able to commercialize it and create jobs that pay and to have a living wage for things. That is the role of city government as far as I'm concerned. We spend a lot of time talking about affordable housing and trying to find places for people to live on their own and be able to do that. We've got to continue to create jobs that pay rather than giving people, recruiting jobs to town that don't pay and then subsidizing housing. You know, we can talk about Ronald Reagan all we want, but he talked about jobs being the solution to poverty. It's the same thing. We can't continue to be a cheap labor state and continue to provide services for people. Let's provide them the jobs and the education that it takes to do that. Before, as we get going, I know we're going to want to talk about siding and where we're at in that part of it. Again, talking about what the role of government is. I think hopefully someone will ask about Foundation Park. And again, talking about jobs, and we've heard a lot in the news this week with the Development Foundation changing some leadership. I think that'll definitely be something that we want to continue to talk about as our community of what, the city is now up to $400,000 a year that we invest in the Development Foundation. And what are we getting for that? And where are we moving forward, whether it's workforce development and those type of things. And again, the parking ramp's been a big part of it as well, of where we're at. So if you don't mind, I'd rather turn it over to questions at this point, and Theresa and I can go back to Councilor Stehly, and I make sure that I treat her with the respect that she deserves. Councilor Stehly and I can answer those questions. We'll fight over the microphone and talk one at a time by the time we're done, so. If we're starting, yes, absolutely, go ahead.
Well, one more thing I just want, as long as we're talking about city projects. One thing I put together, and I'm going to stand by this, I'm going to bring it back again, is, and you may have followed this, the park districting ordinance. Because I think that every district, Pat Starr's district, Northeast, Northwest, every district deserves to have someone on the park board from that area of town. And historically, what has happened is that their appointments by the mayor, they live south, in the south end of town, and nothing against that, but it's a conglomerate of representation. I think 4 of the members right now are in the southeast district. So I don't understand why there would be any pushback to say, let's just have something, a guideline that says that we're going to have someone from each area of town on that board. So we can have some diversity. And those people who live and drive past those parks every day will be able to come in and give a little input. Now, one of the arguments made was that, well, we're going to start having turf wars and people will be vying for their part of town. We have that already set up with the city council, and we're all caring about the whole part of town. But we bring that information to the table. And I think as our city, I was just having a conversation with a gal over here, we're not the same city that we were 25 years ago. We're changing. And so we can't have that same mindset that this is how we did business or policies back then. We've got to be broadening our awareness and bringing everybody to the table. So I'm going to try to bring this back again after we have a new administration, because it was a 4-4 vote, and the mayor broke the tie not to have this be part of the policy. And again, the mayor would be appointing that person. I think there are plenty of people out there who would like to be on the park board. It's a fun board to be on. But I just wanted to put that in, that I'm going to continue to push for this because I think it's important. Yes?
Time for question.
Okay.
Again, I would urge, I think Tom mentioned that I think priority should go to members as far as asking questions. But I would ask the question, to be very honest with you, I don't follow city as close as I do federal, and I know that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I do vote in city elections and all elections, but as far as my knowledge, but is this the truth? A hotel is coming downtown. They're going to have parking stalls in there that cost twice as much to the city as the national average is. And the company that is building the hotel, we have no idea who owns that company. Now, did I get something wrong there, or is that essentially right, and can you fill in the blanks?
If I can start. When I had a letter to the editor in the paper yesterday, okay, this is a legacy development, is the company that was chosen to build this hotel on top of our $21 million parking ramp. So you say, well, is it twice the national average? The facts are, and I brought this up at the meeting, go back and watch our last meeting, our economic director, Darren Ketchum, affirmed I was stating facts, is that this thing is 21.6 million, and there's 525 spaces projected. It's going to be built on top of an existing parking lot that already has 135 spaces. So we're losing those. They're going to get built on top of. So we're going to be netting around 390 new spaces for 21.5 million. Now, we're being told it's so expensive because they're building it with extra duration. Because think about it, it's going to have to support this developer's hotel and multi-use building. $30 million of investor money. Okay, I'm not opposed to investor money, but I kept saying, who are the investors? This is unique. We've never done it before. We're marrying ourselves with these investors. Who are they? Oh, I brought it up 8 months ago. Oh, we can't tell you that. It's confidential. Oh, I'm like, I kept pushing on it to the point that the Argus leader agreed with me and had an editorial stating Stehly is right. We need to know. The project disappeared. I have it. I'm going to put it on my Facebook page. I still save that editorial. That was back in April. Now it has reemerged. I said the same thing. I need to know who these investors are. I think the public wants to know. Why would you be embarrassed to say your name? So they have revealed these guarantors last week. These are the guys putting up the front money. Aaron Holtgren, by the way, he was involved with the lounge situation. Larry Canfield, who by the way has put out an email today telling people to rally on behalf of this. I got someone sent it to me. Paul Sink and Norm Drake. And I asked gave these names a week ago. I said, are there going to be more investors? Yes. Do we get to know who they are? No. And Christine Erickson was on KSFY last night saying that it would be dangerous, or she used some detrimental word, that it would be it would be a bad thing to reveal these investors. And I'm like, I don't think so. So that's my side of this. Councilor Starr, if you want to talk about it.
Absolutely. We kind of come at this in two different directions. The thing that I've been looking at with the parking ramp is that since 2014, we brought it, it's what government does. We bring consultants in to help us out. I mean, they're the national expert. We bring them in, they tell us that we're short of parking in downtown, which I think we'd all agree that depending on when you've been downtown and as part of downtown develops, we need to add some more parking. Director Ketchum uses the number about we're short 2,000 parking spots in downtown Sioux Falls. A combination of public and private, whether that 2,000 number is kind of a 50-50 thing is kind of the way parking is right now downtown between public parking lots and private businesses providing the parking. So we bring the consultant in and they say we need to build a ramp that has between 400 and 600 parking spots. Makes sense. So again, the thing we do as government, we put out a plan that shows we're going to build about 680 spots. We're going to be on the high end of it, which once government reacts, we kind of do a good job of making sure that we're on the high end of it. Well, 2 years ago when that plan was put forward, it was $9.4 million to build a parking lot. What we decided to do, or what the discussion was, is that we needed to do a public-private partnership. A P3 is kind of the buzzword in government circles now, that you combine the private sector with a public project, which makes sense. Again, sponsorships, are what we're used to seeing in public-private partnerships. Well, they started going to put cost estimates together. It got up to $12 or $13 million, and all of a sudden the deal blew up with another development group and said, oh, we're never going to spend that much on a parking ramp, it won't work. So we did another request for proposals, or a request for qualifications. And that's when we selected Legacy Development. Mr. Drake's kind of the lead on that, but Aaron Holgren and that whole group of people came, and we had about a $12 or $13 million private partnership. We were still bringing in the parking ramp for not more than $17 million at that point, and that was just this spring. So the numbers went back and forth with the construction company, and they just couldn't get it done for $17 million. We haven't heard anything until 3 weeks ago, and the administration came back with this plan and dropped it on our plate and said, hey, you've got a couple weeks to approve this. We need to get this done so we can have a groundbreaking ceremony in April of 2018 before the administration changes. So we've got to move forward and get this done and push it through. You have 3 weeks to make a decision and do all of your due diligence. We'll answer all of your questions. We'll tell you everything, but this is what we need to do. So the current plan is a 13-floor structure that is about a $30 million investment by private developers, so Legacy Development. The city's investment total project is $21.3 million. So Jim, you asked a really good question about, are these the most, double the national average? We want to call the newspaper fake news and throw them under the bus because they pointed out to us what this was actually costing us. So the administration waited a week to tell everyone. They didn't want to respond to the media questions. What they wanted to do was wait and answer the council. So it took them a week to come up with a plan that explained really If you take all the soft costs out of the plan, the ground preparation, the soil samples, all of the, what they're calling soft expenses, it's really $26,000 per parking spot. So the taxpayers still have to pay $40,000 per parking spot, but if you eliminate those soft costs, it takes it down to $26,000. The national average is about $20,000 per parking spot.
Yeah, but what's the rationale? I mean, what's the soft versus the hard? I mean, why wouldn't the two be combined? I mean,
My explanation of that, if I take money out of my left pocket and pay you, or I take money out of my right pocket, it still comes out of my pocket of whether it is or not. The national average didn't include some of these soft costs that they're talking about, but how else do you get a feel for what the cost of the project is? So let me back up just a half a second and then I'll keep going with questions, or we will. The thing that upsets me about the project, or where I'm uncomfortable with it, is our consultant, our process is started as a solution to a parking problem in downtown Sioux Falls. What we've done is proposing the 525. We're not guaranteed 525 spots at this point. They're already kind of hedging that, we're still in schematic designs. When the numbers actually come in, it could be more, it could be less. I'm willing to bet that it's probably less, more likely than it is more spots that we're going to get as we move forward with this plan. But we get to 390 net new spots downtown. The development that's going along with this is going to take at least a minimum of 100 spots. So now we're down to 290. The developer, when it was half the size of the project, told us that he would need at least 150 to 200 spots. Now we're down to 200 probably net spots when this all nets out of what would do that. I agree that it's a good thing that we do a $30 million development downtown, but what we're not doing is solving a parking problem downtown. So we're building a ramp that we can't expand on. There's no expansion because we're selling the air rights for $1 million above this and around the facility. So we're not actually solving a parking situation. We're talking about a development deal. Now for me, that's a whole different discussion. Why are taxpayers in Sioux Falls supplementing service level jobs? We just, I talked a minute ago about the USD Discovery District, medical research, development, those kind of things, bringing jobs to Sioux Falls that pay. Now we're bringing hotel service jobs, which, don't get me wrong, our entry level jobs are important to every economy, but we're doing just fine in Sioux Falls with entry level jobs. We don't need taxpayers to subsidize another restaurant in downtown, another retail shop. If the business model works, you can have those type of things downtown. They're good. The private sector should provide those type of things. We shouldn't be investing $21.3 million into a project to make that work. That's my opinion. See, I waited way too long with the microphone.
Well, let me have that, okay. But let me also say that they're gonna say that this is not coming out of your pockets at all. The people paying for this are going to be the people using the ramps. They're the employees. They're citizens just like we are. They have to go down and pay to work downtown. Do we want such a high rate of leasing that we put them out of business? I mean, that's called affordability. The plan works if we support this from these, when you go down to Minerva's or wherever you're downtown and you pay the parking meter, or you maybe come out a little too late and you get a $10 fine, or it used to be 5, went up to 10, could be 15 and 20, who knows? That all of this is all going to have to generate and support this $21 million ramp. But let's just say we don't get enough revenue and we raise the fees on these leases and on our tickets and on the meters, and that doesn't cover the cost. Guess what? They've got the second penny as the second signer. The second penny is the collateral. So that's going to be kicking in to pay for this thing. And I personally have been saying I'm not going to I'm not going to support that. I want to protect the second penny. We've already pledged it to debt for the event center. We're paying $10 million a year to pay that bond. Also, the new administration building, the $25 million building going up. We've already committed the second penny to that. So why are we tying it to this project? I said, well, let's let the parking facilities downtown be their own collateral. But just like you may ask me to sign on for a loan for your car, you know, I'm not so sure I want to be that second signer because you default, it comes back on me. So there's underpinnings of this thing that just don't play out well for me. I think we need to, my opinion is let's lay this down. There's no life or death urgency. And let's bring it back again when we have a new mayor and a new council, because they're the ones who are going to have to play this thing out. And it wouldn't hurt anyone to let it, just to leave it. If it's still a good deal for these developers, it'd be a good deal after the election happens. But anyway, next question.
Oh, no, I want to throw one more thing. This is an okay deal for the parking ramp. But I think as taxpayers in the city of Sioux Falls, we deserve an excellent deal. You know, what we haven't done is we're getting a deal done. And you're going to hear a lot of support from downtown merchants and in that area of being supportive of this project because they need the parking. They need those 200 spots. Don't get me wrong that those aren't vital to what's going on in development and building out downtown. The problem is we've rushed to get a good or an okay deal done rather than holding out and getting a good deal for both taxpayers and the developer by the time we're done. So I'm going this direction because I saw her first.
So if you allow Legacy to just build what they need to do, you know, and say the business deal is just what they're going to need for their hotel, I'm assuming the land remains in city's hands, it's a lease, correct? So what are your, if they just build the amount that they actually need, you still have your public-private partnership, what are your other alternatives for better priced parking spots that might be geographically located? Maybe they're smaller, more unique opportunities to build around our downtown that doesn't look so, I mean, this just doesn't feel right to me.
Well, things don't feel right when we have a conversation for just, we have 3
Repeat the
weeks.
question?
Yes, absolutely.
Because people over here probably didn't hear.
Yep, the question really is, and correct me, is what does the developer need in the number of spots and where we're at and what the lease is and what the agreement is. So the way we've negotiated this deal is the developer is paying us $1 million in cash. And I asked several times, cash or value, if you remember that part of it, what $1 million amounts to. So there's a couple that is by the time we're done, and we can get that in a couple of minutes. The $1 million lease is an 80-year lease to use the grounds to build the development on. At the end of the 80 years, the city will own the hotel, restaurants, type of thing, depending on what the agreement is at the end of the 80 years. Which usually in an 80-year-old building means we're responsible for cleaning it up and taking it away is what's gonna. But when you look at it on a monthly basis, and this is a fair kind of borderline whether it's fair analysis or not, it works out to about $1,052 a month lease on the land the city owns.
Could you answer the question?
Yes, absolutely.
No, actually the question was, why not just let them build and, you know, lease and build only the spots they need? What are the other alternatives that you guys can come up with that are more affordable for us to enjoy downtown?
Yep, absolutely. I guess the question, or you want to, I did a bad job answering the first one. Or you want me to follow up? What I think you're really asking is what, if the developer wanted to build a $30 million investment in downtown Sioux Falls, could they build their own number of spots? How many spots do they need? And move ahead and then we build a public parking ramp somewhere else that maybe is more affordable. The hardest part about that and what makes that unique is that we as a city started this process. We said we needed to build a ramp and then we asked a developer to be part of our deal. So this isn't the developer coming to us, it was us soliciting proposals in how to make this work. But you were, so I mean it's kind of a chicken or an egg thing of who goes first. The reason they were able to propose what they did is because they knew the parking was going to be there for them. The developer told Councilor Stehly and I in a meeting that the reason the city was building the parking spots is because we could borrow the money less expensively than he could as the developer, which is true. But what's interesting about this deal is the bonds that we are going to sell, we're not selling tax-free municipal bonds that have a lower rate and interest charge. We have to sell taxable municipal bonds because of the public-private partnership. So the interest rate in this market is roughly going to be double, which again works into the model that we haven't seen yet. I saw part of the model this morning, but it was labeled that I couldn't share it with the public yet. You probably got that same email that here's what how parking rates are going to go up in the future, but it said don't disseminate to the public on the email that I got. So I mean, it is. Go ahead.
Well, and on that, I'll tell you, we're talking about secrecy here. And Jim, you talked about we got to change the culture at the state and national level. I think we need to change the culture within our city level. And I'm going to tell you, for a year and a half, I've been watching these secret deals being negotiated behind closed doors. And as a council member, I don't get to know what's being talked about. And then they bring out the end result. We just had it happen with this golf course RFP thing. They say, this is our choice, Councilor Stehly, vote for it. And I'm saying, wait a minute, what are the other choices? Oh, you don't get to see that, it's confidential. The same thing with this parking ramp. Someone cooked this up and it got launched on us. Okay, I had no input into this, the details of what the contract is gonna look like. It was just given to us and we're being told, eat it. This is it. And so I think in answer to your question about looking at unique opportunities for parking, I think let this thing just lie till after the election. Then we need to go out to the community, the business community downtown, and start looking around for solutions. Listening to the people downtown, listening to the citizens and saying, what do you think? What are our options? Years ago, they were talking about having something in partnership with Wells Fargo in that location. I think we need more parking throughout the downtown, not just consolidated in this one area. Should this develop? We got another hotel going next to this too. That's a whole other issue, is where those people are going to park. So I think this developer, if it's a good deal, let's say give them our blessings and say build your own parking spaces, and we're going to, if you want to lease unto us, great. But let's go back to the drawing board. Again, I wasn't in on the front end of this whole thing, so I've never bought into it, and I don't think you were in on the front end either. Yeah, we had one council member who was in on that secret dialogue behind closed doors. We call them RFPs, RFQs. I call that secret and not good for the public.
Next question. Let's move on from Ram.
I've worked for local government all my life. An observation and a question. This seems to be an extremely weak council.
Extremely what?
An extremely weak council. You don't seem to have very much power. But the real question I had, do I understand that you're building a parking ramp and they're building a $30 million hotel on top of it, and it's costing twice as much? And the obvious inference is that you're building footings and support columns that are several times as much as necessary for a parking garage, and it's building this stuff. You're in fact subsidizing this hotel, and they won't even tell us who's being subsidized. That's the issue that concerns me. Is I don't know whether you need to subsidize them or not. I'm not very big on subsidies. But I sure as the Dickens would like to know who I'm subsidizing.
Exactly, that's what I'm at, the individuals' names. And I will tell you right this morning, I started getting emails from people saying, and some of them were the construction company that's signed on to do this. We want this. Councilor Stehly, vote for this. And I'm gonna start saying to these individuals, are you going to be benefiting and investing in this project? Because if you are, and let's say my sister wants to get in on it. Let's say, Mayor Huther's mother-in-law wants to get in on it. Do we have a right to know that in our community? In this instance, if it was a private developer, I'd say not, absolutely not. But this is with us. We are the city. We are the city. And in response to what you said about a weak council, it was set up, this is charter form of government, the strong mayor form of government is exactly designed for a weak form council. And we were told by the two guys who were, two of the framers of this, that we are to be a board of directors. And Janet, you heard him say that. We are to be a board of directors. And I'm saying, well, then the board of directors can fire the CEO, right? Apparently. But so I think some of us have taken this very seriously, and we're stepping out and really trying to make a difference for the community, and not just being told what to do, but we are independent minded, and we, again, have a right to communicate with you and let you know what's going on. Okay, yes, Mike.
Yes, I have a question about, I think we're going to be borrowing about $16.5 million. And this information that you got this morning, I don't know what it is and you can't tell us, but is it safe to say that it's going to be somewhere in the $6 million range that we're going to be paying in interest over 13 years?
You know what, I haven't seen the whole model, and that's the hardest part. When I talked to our staff this morning, the email I got, and I play these things up bigger than I probably should, but it was, what I got this morning was basically where the projections are for parking meter rates, tickets, and then the rates that'll be charged over the next about, I want to say it only went out to like 2024 or 2026. So not a huge amount of information, certainly not what I need to make the model go. We don't know how the bonds are being structured and where the interest payments will lie, because part of it will be try to be tax-free, or they'll try to get the IRS to agree to saying that they should be tax-free municipal bonds. So, but there is additional cost by adding this building. And again, it goes back to what I've been saying is, this isn't a parking solution, it's a development deal. And we need to evaluate the development deal based on the number of jobs created, the number, and when I ask those questions of how many jobs will be created, what's the average pay, where, just like any other development deal, the questions that we ask when government's involved, they said, well, it's going to be a $30 million investment in downtown. It's got to be a good deal. But, you know, we do that a lot of times when we talk about what's the economic impact of the Denny, of the entertainment center. We sell lots of tickets, we do a lot of things, but what's the actual? And then they start talking multipliers and we get numbers, and we've never taken the time to have an economist say, what happens to those dollars that leave with Garth Brooks, that go back to his home state? Where do the promoters' money go in those type of things? How do we evaluate whether this is a good deal or not? I get that if we build a $30 million worth of office space, possibly condos, retail, hotel, whatever this is going to be, is good for our community. But is it 21.3 million? And how do you make that comparison between the two? Are we getting a good value or a great value for our taxpayers? And again, it goes back to how much are we investing to make the development. I think they use the term Texas donut approach around the parking ramp. It was a term I hadn't heard. I just think of Texas-sized donuts and go that direction. But how do we know that we're getting a good deal? And when we try to do these things in 3 weeks, that the council has it before us, what they said to us was, Councilor, we've been talking about, since Councilor Jameson's time on the council, we've been talking about parking in downtown Sioux Falls. But we don't talk to the community about it. It shows up in the newspaper one day and you're going to vote on it on Tuesday. And then that's how we're supposed to make a decision as our community. We were moving on from ramp, weren't we?
Judy.
What office in City Hall thinks this kind of math works?
She said, what office in City Hall thinks this kind of math works? And it's the Office of Economic Development, who is under the direct authority of the mayor. Let me also say, I mean, before, we got, what, 7 minutes left? I'm just going to say to you, and I was having a conversation earlier, part of our problem in our community is that, I mean, people will call me or Councilor Starr and they tell me things, and I always say, hey, Why don't you come out and say something? Why don't you call the other council members, come to the council meeting, write a letter to the editor? We may not agree, I would encourage you anyway. You've got to, this isn't just about us up here doing this is about all of us getting involved. So if you have concerns about this ramp, or anything that we've discussed, you need to call your council members, and like I said, I've got the little sheets over there. I've got also, if you got my card I mailed out, I've got copies of this. This has our phone number on it as well. But call us, email us. We need to hear from you.
Let's do 50 plus 1 before we
Oh,
get
50.
too far before
Oh,
we're
yeah,
out of time.
50 plus 1. You heard about that, Rex Rolfing and Michelle Erpenbach came up with this, and they passed this mandate. Now, instead of, Councilor Starr and I were both elected with less than 50% of the vote. Michelle Erpenbach was elected with less than 50%, Rex Rolfing less than 50, it was a threshold of about 34%. Now they passed this that you have to get 50 plus 1 votes percent. And what that's going to do is force runoff elections. And 87, I think it was $78,000, our clerk said, the runoff is going to be for the mayor's race. $78,000 now in just a simple city council race if we don't get the 50%. And I will tell you, the people I know on the council who got elected with 45, 48%, they're working very hard. They're earning every 48% that they got. So we are supporting an effort now to hopefully with the Charter Revision Commission, they're going to put it on the ballot so that you will be able to vote on that and have a voice of that. Did you want to add to it?
Yep. The Charter Revision Committee meets again this week, or early next week, so look into the exact dates. I think it's Wednesday next week. It's the first part of December. But what really makes this hard, it's a part-time job. I have 3 kids and a full-time job, and the time that it takes, and I love every minute of it that I spend. And I put in a lot of time. I know Councilor Stehly does too. I don't think there's anyone on the council that doesn't. But extending the elections 3 more weeks and having a runoff, in my case, there were 3 of us that ran. It was a really close race. The 3rd person wasn't, but made up a difference. There were a little over 1,100 people that voted in my district, either for or against, and I got 480 votes of those 1,100. But if we'd have been forced into a runoff 3 weeks later, I would have had to raise thousands of dollars more. I would have had to try to extend my family, the time away, the amount of things, and the number of people out of that 1,100 would have dropped. When we look at runoff races, the numbers drop because the people who get eliminated, their supporters don't come back and don't care. Because a lot of times in city races, school races, we go out and vote and support somebody that we like. There are a lot of us that vote in every election and we do our part, and I totally understand that. But what it does is it makes it harder for people to run. It makes it hard for good people to run. And people with moderate incomes, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to run. Where do I come up with another $3,000 to $5,000? I can't write a personal check to run a campaign for 3 more weeks. Because that's what it's going to really amount to, because you can't go to your friends and ask for money. When I was running the last time, I came here to a lot of you in the room here, gave me $25. Gave me $10, said, hey Pat, we want you to do really well. We know that you'll be good on the council. We want to support you. That won't happen when we add all these extra runoffs for council. Councilor Neitzert had the right point. He goes, yeah, if we elect a bad council person, because we were making the comparison that the mayor should have to have 50% and there should be a runoff, and when there's 8+ people running, that probably makes sense, that narrowing it down to a runoff makes sense. If we elect a bad counselor out of 8, that's probably, we'll correct it in 4 years and the people will do that. We elect a bad mayor and we get 4 or 8 years of things. So it's much more important that we do a runoff and get a chance to have a chance to look at those people. So we're going to keep going. Tam wanted to, I think.
Thank you. I'm not a member, but I want to make a comment. I have a quiz, a little history quiz. Anyone remember the downtown river ramp parking garage? Yes. What happened to it? Why? Why did it get torn down? And
Because
now,
we didn't do maintenance and it wore out, and then we decided to knock it down.
well,
And we wanted to develop the Riverwalk.
yes,
which-
yes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
please, those of you who are running, when you get elected, remember your decisions affect the taxpayer. Because taxpayer dollars paid for that parking ramp. And now we need more parking.
It's a good time. We are not running, we're halfway through our first term, so it's a little easier to say what you think maybe. Yes, we'll both stay around afterwards if anybody has any questions. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, members of the forum and guests. Please come back.
Folks, anybody else want to entertain us?
We don't come up here to entertain you. We come up here to inform you.